Hai, Anda menyaksikan Sedang Viral bersama saya Gracia Bern. Teman-teman Liputan 6 saat ini yang juga masih menarik untuk kita bahas adalah industri energi Indonesia saat ini sedang menghadapi tekanan global untuk mempercepat energi bersih. Sementara kalau kita lihat dari laporan BP, kemungkinan sampai pada tahun 2050 permintaan energi terbesar di Indonesia masih didominasi oleh energi minyak, gas, dan batu bara. Indonesia dan sejumlah negara lain di dunia juga diminta untuk mengatasi krisis iklim dengan adanya pertemuan sejumlah komunitas internasional, baik itu dari PBB, salah satunya yang terdekat adalah COP30 atau COP30. Nah, kami mengundang analis energi mancanegara untuk mengetahui bagaimana Indonesia bisa menyeimbangkan kebutuhan energi migas dan batu bara di dalam negeri, sementara masih juga berkomitmen untuk transisi energi bersih yang akan dicapai dalam beberapa tahun ke depan. So we're going to discuss this interesting topic with energy analyst Gaurav Sharma is with us today. Thank you very much for joining us, Liputan SCTV. Mr. Sharma, Indonesia is currently pursuing a dual track energy strategy, first continuing to rely on oil, gas, and coal to support its economic growth while also committing to achieve net zero emissions by 2060. What is your opinion on this strategy in balancing domestic energy needs with global decarbonization goals?
I think it's a complex problem that Indonesia is facing. It's one of the world's key demand centers in terms of servicing its population. Yet at the same time, there is this global pressure for it to react as a major economy to transition targets, to lower emissions targets. So far, what the country has done is taken a plethora of resources, its strategic strength in hydrocarbons, and tried to square it with some of the renewables policies that it has. So far, despite it being a tough challenge, you would say that it is doing rather well relative to some of the other nations out in the Asia Pacific and in wider Asian continent who are facing identical problems in terms of meeting targets, yet at the same time keeping their populations happy, keeping the end consumer on board.
Okay, so do you think that the oil, gas, and coal industries are worldwide ready for this transition to cleaner energy sources?
Based on current modeling, including my own, I think it will be very safe to assume that at least until 2040, oil and natural gas are going to play a wider part in the energy transition because they are needed. We certainly cannot snap and say that let's discard fossil fuels. It's simply not going to happen. Now, when you get that context, nation states are grappling with the same issue, saying, well, how do we approach this? At this point in time, for the next 15, 20 years, investment is still required into oil and gas in parallel with perhaps renewable strategies. But these are complementary energy streams. They're not supplementary or not replacement dynamic. They are complementary streams.
Okay, as you told earlier, there is a global pressure that we also face in Indonesia on fossil fuel producing countries like us to accelerate decarbonizations. How does international pressure influence investment trends in the oil and gas sectors in the regions? What do you think about it?
Look, there is always this east-west tussle, which I'm sure as a broadcaster you're very a party to. You hear it on a daily basis. I think there is this conundrum that the people in the east think that the West is lecturing to them. There is definitely an element of truth in that. Now, how do we go about it? The targets for Indonesia cannot be the same as, say, the United States or the UK or France. Yet at the same time, the citizenry in these countries is also placing pressure on their government, saying, why are our energy prices so high? At the end of the day, transition economics will dictate it. Now, for Indonesia, that transition economics is contingent upon how to keep the Indonesian consumer happy. Now, in that respect, you simply cannot say, we'll wash off oil and gas, let's just simply concentrate on higher energy prices because we're going down the renewables pathway. That is simply not going to happen. Now, various countries from India to Indonesia, from China to Vietnam have their own targets. And their targets are based on what they think is manageable, whether it's 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60. They are working out their own dynamic, and Indonesia is no exception.
We will have these COP30 meetings tomorrow in Brazil. Many countries have announced net zero targets, but some continue to expand oil and gas productions like us. Does COP30 risk becoming a symbolic forum without concrete actions? What do you think?
I definitely think so. Look, I am very skeptical of COP30. I think you have often noticed in previous years that we have these COP meetings, and in the course of these COP meetings, a lot is said. There is a lot of rhetoric, but very little is done. Very little concrete action emerges. Now, there's also a moot point here, going all the way back to Glasgow, to Egypt, to the Emirates, to Azerbaijan. You look at and Brazil now. You look at all the places where have been COP summits. Now, what is the common binding theme? They have all these regions, going all the way back to Scotland, are major oil producers, which tells you something, which sends a subtle message. But I am afraid I concur with you. I'm losing faith in some of the rhetoric that comes out of COP30.
So do you think it's impossible that we can reach these net zero emissions by 2060? Or maybe it's going to be like we're living in utopia about it?
Sort of. But what I would say is that concrete action perhaps will be taken both from the public sector and the private sector in any country, not just Indonesia. Concrete action will be taken. That action would be tangible. You and I will see it, will feel the effects of it. But I remain skeptical that we will reach some of these emission targets by the dates specified by various nations.
From your perspective, sir, what strategic steps should Indonesia and also other countries take so that its energy diplomacy becomes not only defensive, but also proactive in shaping the global climate agenda, especially for the domestic agenda itself?
See, that is a great question. It is where transition economics, energy transition economics, and international diplomacy intertwine. How do we collaborate? How do we work together? How do we listen to each other rather than lecture each other? And if you go down that pathway in phased increments, let's not have targets to 2060, 2050, 24. No, let's go in 5-year phases. In 5-year phases, what can be realistically achieved without energy prices overshooting in whichever geography we are talking about? And in Indonesia's case, it's particularly prescient because there's urbanization. There are huge urban populations that need to be serviced, and these urban populations will not tolerate a sudden spike in energy prices. Yet at the same time, they're climate aware. People know that the planet is getting warmer. We bring all these elements together and perhaps have a phased approach to energy transition rather than sort of hectoring or lecturing about targets in 2050 and 2060. Perhaps a slow, phased approach is the one to take.
We're going to talk again about these CCS and CCUS. I think you already know about it. Do you think that technologies such as carbon capture and storage, CCS, and the CCUS, carbon capture utilizations and storage, also extend the life of traditional energy industries without compromising net zero targets?
Definitely so. They would do, but there is a cost permutation here. It depends on the terms of finances of that particular energy company and their willingness. So at the same time, we were talking about energy positivity for the Indonesian consumer. You also have to talk about the stakeholders in the key energy companies. So if you're going down the CCS route and the CCS route, the finance structure, the subsidy structure, or perhaps taxation, whatever is deployed to make these carbon capture projects a success is what will dictate the direction of travel. But in a short answer, yes, there could be offered some mitigation mechanisms via these carbon capture projects, but on a standalone basis, they're not a panacea. I mean, it's part of the wider dynamic, but not sort of an end-all solution to lowering the footprint.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your time, and thank you for joining us in Liputan SCTV. Actually, we have a lot of questions, but I know our time is limited, only 10 minutes. I hope it's okay for you too. Thank you again for joining us in Liputan SCTV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dan teman-teman, itu tadi wawancara kami bersama dengan Gaurav Sharma, seorang analis energi dari London, Inggris, terkait dengan apa yang mungkin bisa dilakukan oleh Indonesia terkait transisi energi bersih. Memang kalau kita lihat dari agenda PBB pada tahun 2060 akan ada net zero emissions. Tapi seperti laporan yang sudah saya sampaikan sebelumnya, prediksi dunia terkait dengan transisi energi bersih ini sampai pada tahun 2040 dan 2050 masih didominasi oleh energi minyak, gas, dan batu bara. Tapi bagaimanapun itu target yang sudah dicanangkan oleh Indonesia dan juga seluruh komunitas internasional, apabila memang ingin mencapai net zero emissions di tahun-tahun tertentu, harus ada komunikasi yang jelas dan roadmap yang jelas dari seluruh pihak pemerintah dan stakeholder. Ini yang menarik untuk kita tunggu bersama seperti apa transisi energi di Indonesia. Saya Gracia Bert, sampai jumpa.